Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Book Trek 2023, the summer of Trek. This is a BookTube event created by Vin at Revenant Reads, and we have a valiant bridge crew of co-hosts reading Star Trek fiction all summer long. And I've been enjoying the heck out of it, as you can tell, because I'm making a video every day. I love Star Trek fiction. I love the stuff that I have read. I love the stuff that I haven't read. I love the exploration of it. I just think I've loved the show since the very beginning, so that probably helps. So an invitation to read Star Trek fiction, you didn't need to push me very hard. And what I've been doing so far for Book Trek, Summer of Trek, is to add a Star Trek book to my night's reading every night. And the more I look at my summer, I have a huge project that I have agreed to do this summer. Its deadline is at the third week of August, and I've been sort of putting off I should be doing a huge chunk of work every day on it, and I've been putting that off. I've been irresponsible about a lot of that, and that's going to have to change, and it's going to have to change soon. I can break down the size of my commitment as much as anybody can. It's not hard to do, and that's going to have to change soon. So I'm thinking that probably starting in July, I will not be doing a Star Trek video every day. I will allow my co-host time to catch up, and I'll be making a Star Trek video every few days. But for now, I'm still thoroughly procrastinating. So I added a Star Trek book to my pile last night. This thing is by Jeff Marriott, and it's called The Folded World. It's a Star Trek original series novel in which the Enterprise is shepherding a diplomatic delegation of Ixolians to a summit. They are trying to join the Federation. They are meeting with Federation ambassadors. There's another ship that is escorting the Federation ambassador. Jim Kirk and his crew, in their original 5-year mission, as far as I can tell, are escorting the Ixolians and a Federation envoy, Federation ambassador. So there'll be two separate. Not everyone's going in one ship. They're going in two separate ships to this location. Because the Ixolians are tensely negotiating whether or not they want to join the Federation. And en route, the Enterprise gets a distress call from the other vessel. And the closer they of course divert to go to save that vessel. There's a tense moment on the bridge where the Ixolian ambassador says, we have a timetable. We've argued long and hard to hammer out a timetable, and now you're diverting from it. And Kirk has to hold his temper and say, well, a ship is in distress. We're obviously not going to ignore that for your diplomatic event. He has to be really nice about it. But the novel starts off with a weird little moment that it doesn't have a real good payoff in the book, but then not a lot of this book has a real good payoff. Where at the very beginning of the book, Kirk is looking at the main viewer of the bridge and is totally lost in thought because of the date. Not because of what he's looking at, because of the date on the calendar back on Earth, which reminds him of an uncle of his in Idaho. This is obviously an attempt to reconcile Star Trek Generations with the known Star Trek continuity, because in the Star Trek movies, we're told that Kirk is from Iowa, but in Star Trek Generations, the writers of the show didn't know that, or they forgot it, and when we see him in his own past, he's in Idaho, not Iowa, reflecting the penchant on the part of either the West Coast or the East Coast to completely conflate all of the square vowel states of the middle of the country. I've seen people do that in real life. Idaho, Illinois, Ohio, Iowa. What's the difference? I'm sure that's where that mistake came from. But this being Star Trek, all the wonky nerds that come afterwards have to reconcile it somehow. So they do. They give Kirk an uncle who has a farm in Idaho, and he's remembering that uncle at the beginning of the book. Weird way to open things. But he does lay down the law. He says, ambassador or no, and diplomatic summit or no, we are of course going to go and see what's wrong here. And when they get close to the coordinates of the other ship, weird things start to happen. The chronometers, the power relays, the power sensors all start to go haywire. Like you're not sure that the sensors are telling you what is actually true. And Kirk notices this effect. He knows how deadly it would be. You can't not know what your engines are doing. So he backs off from it. And he realizes it does have a discrete border, because when you back off far enough, the effect goes away. So there's something that has befouled that other ship and has befouled, as you can see, lots of other ships. And they need to figure out what that thing is. obviously, in addition to saving the other ship, they also don't want this thing as a hazard to navigation just sitting out there. So, in a very original series move, Kirk decides to go and investigate in person, and he brings Spock and McCoy. He brings his chief medical officer and his science officer and executive officer. So the whole of the ship's command pinnacle goes on a shuttlecraft. You obviously can't trust the transporters, although you can't really trust the shuttlecrafts either. They go on the Galileo 2, which dates this thing at least a little. You know that the Galileo 7 has already happened. And that the original Galileo shuttle burned up in the atmosphere of a planet. They go on the Galileo 2, and they bring a large security contingency with them. And I know that the standing joke with Star Trek, so much of a joke that it's actually a novel by John Scalzi. I know that the standing joke is that red-shirted security people are just cannon fodder. You know that if they're on board, they're going to be destroyed. They are going to be the body count to underscore how dangerous the mission is. We actually saw that, right? When I was doing that No Time Like the Past novel where Kirk meets Seven of Nine, the one red-shirted security officer bites the dirt right away. She gets vaporized right away. Now, in the case in that novel, that security officer, that big, strapping, blonde security officer, she is killed right away, and she doesn't come back, but she does figure in the plot. I didn't want to mention anything about that in that No Time Like the Past video because it's kind of a spoiler, but she's not gone and forgotten. She's gone, but she's not forgotten. Let's just put it that way. But here, it is so obvious that those red-shirted security guards are going to get picked off. And they do. They almost immediately start getting picked off. But Kirk and Spock and McCoy eventually do get to the heart of the problem here, which involves another alien race that is very much connected to the Extolians. So this wraps up, in a way, it wraps up well with the plot of the Extolians wanting to join the Federation. Kirk and crew meet a energy race, a race of energy beings. I don't want to spoil the book here, but I do want to rant about it. So I'm going to have to walk a fine line. Those energy beings were the original inhabitants of the Extolians planet, and the fact that they're not anymore is attributable to the Extolians, whose members now, centuries later, want to join the Federation. And we learn all that in the course of this book, and there's action aplenty. There's some character moments, not many. We've got our main banner characters here. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and also Scotty plays a big role in this book. Aside from Kirk, they didn't feel very spot on to me. Spock especially is just an exposition machine. It doesn't... This is a Star Trek original series novel that came out, I think, if I remember the timing of this thing, it came out long after Star Trek was off the air, long after The Next Generation was off the air. This might have come out even after Deep Space Nine and Voyager were off the air. So the purpose of this thing, the purpose of an original series novel that far after the original series, would not in any way anymore be to give fans the thrill of seeing these characters in action. It would be to give fans the thrill of revisiting these characters. And to do that, the characters have to be in character. We've talked about this as an obligation of pastiche fiction. And it's not done well in this book. You won't get many hits like that at all. There's an added character on the Enterprise she was traumatized because during the episode Balance of Terror, where a whole string of outposts, of Federation outposts, are being destroyed by a cloaked Romulan vessel. This character was in a craft going from one outpost to the other when those two outposts were destroyed. So she cut power so the Romulans wouldn't be able to detect her, and just floated there in space, watching on her sensors as her homeworld and all of her friends and all of her colleagues was being destroyed. And she then was found by the Enterprise, and they took her on as a crew member, but she's traumatized. McCoy's wondering about her. Early on in the book, he suggests that, she's talking to me, and she seems to be doing all right psychologically, but what she could really use is somebody who has had a trauma like this. And that's Kirk. So once again, Kirk's experiences on Tarsus 4 with Kodos the Executioner come up in a Star Trek novel. Once again, that's like the fifth time in Book Trek 2023 that one detail of Kirk's biography has come up. And Kirk is resistant at first, but then he agrees. And that character is well done, but again, I had all sorts of issues with it because that character's trauma is clearly going to be used, and I predicted it even when I first encountered her, and it did turn out to be true, that character's trauma is going to be used as a plot device. Which doesn't seem... I guess it's time-honored, but if it's so predictable, I don't really appreciate it, and it was completely predictable. But it was all well done. This is a well-done Star Trek adventure. Certainly in 1980, we original Star Trek fans would have been overjoyed to get something like this. Absolutely overjoyed. Beautiful cover, well crafted, no weird digressions of any kind. Well done thing. Even the digression about Kirk's uncle in Idaho turns out to pay off in the end. In a way. In a way. Now, the problem that I had with this, here, I guess I should just mention, if you're watching this and you don't want to know some of the results of this book, this is spoiler territory. I hate that. We're all adults. If you're reading this thing just to find out what happened next, but some people do, so if you're worried about spoilers, you should turn off this video now, because I have to talk about at least one element of the end of this book so that I can rant about it. The rant is all important. So, are we ready? You don't want spoilers for the end of the Folded World. You shouldn't be watching anymore. One part of the end, I'm going to have to spoil. So, you're all gone now? Good. Okay. Because eventually, Kirk finds out from these energy beings what the Exoldians did to them. And the Exoldians don't want them to know. The delegation that's on board the Enterprise doesn't want them to know this dirty secret from their past. They even try to blow up the ship rather than have that be known. And thanks to Mr. Spock and Scotty, that doesn't work. And Scotty and Mr. Spock and then Kirk warn the Exoldians that it doesn't matter what you do. We're recording all of this. You're not going to be a member of the Federation anymore. These talks are over because of what you did to these energy beings on your planet. And that's when I started yelling at the book. Because these Exoldians didn't do anything to these energy beings. There is no such thing as blood guilt. A group of Exoldians centuries ago did something to these energy beings. This group of diplomats may be trying to hide that detail, but the average everyday Exoldian on the planet that wants to join the Federation and get the benefits of trade, as I mentioned in this book over and over again, don't even know that it happened, much less share any guilt. There is no such thing as blood guilt. Now, if I remember correctly, this thing came out around 2013 or 2014. That was right before the alt-left took off. The alt-right was on its feet and doing business in the early parts of the 2010s. But the alt-left had not gained any strength yet. And now they have. Now they absolutely rule a whole bunch of institutions, of societal institutions. And one of their principal beliefs is that there is such a thing as blood guilt. And you can't ever eradicate it. You can't ever do right. You can only live in groveling penance for the rest of your life for something that you never did. Something that people did that maybe bore a surface resemblance to you centuries ago. Because the surface resemblance is all that matters. The surface is all that matters. If you have the wrong skin tone, then you are a slave trader. It doesn't matter that no one in your bloodline ever did trade slaves. You are one. You are guilty because blood guilt is real. It's not. You're responsible for what you do. You're not responsible for what someone did before you were born. And any system that makes you responsible for what someone did before you were born is an unjust system. So I didn't appreciate the mischaracterization of the Federation here at all. This has to be one of the earliest examples of that in science. Now science fiction is absolutely rife with that. With all the progressive stack, the prevalence of blood guilt, the justifiability of genocide, fiction of all kinds in all genres is suffused with that now. The publishing industry has been institutionally captured. Most of the writing workshops in the country have been institutionally captured. So whether you believe those things or not, you absolutely shouldn't believe those things, but whether you believe those things or not, you won't get a contract. You won't get an MFA degree if you don't parrot them. But back then, this is a decade ago, it would have been nice. Maybe I found one of the earliest examples of that. I don't like it. I didn't like encountering that at all. I didn't like the fact that thanks to the author's ideological stance, my heroes were going to stridently advocate for something that's completely unfair, completely unjust. But they do. They do, to a certain extent, they do. So I'm still trying to keep this a little vague, just so that I don't ruin everything for you. But then again, the people who are worried about spoilers should be gone by now, right? I know I'm irresistible. You don't like turning me off. But nevertheless, every once in a while, it usually doesn't happen with book discussions on my channel of any kind. It's usually the easiest thing in the world to avoid spoiling any plot twists at the end of a book. The only reason I wanted to talk about this one is to get off a good rant. And there you go. The rant concluded. So, my book trek, I'm going to keep doing book trek videos for the rest of June. And my book trek pick for last night, I just spun the wheel here on the iPad, wasn't really a winner. It was competently done, but it wasn't really a winner. So I'm hoping for better tonight. I don't really have a rationale of any kind, so I think I'll just spin the wheel again, and it'd be so much nicer. It is so much nicer to spin the wheel on an elegant slate of metal and glass instead of fumbling around with books, with print and paper books, 50-year-old paperbacks that are flaking on my hand, or maybe I'm breaking off a part of the cover or something like that, and it's getting on the bed or on the dog or whatnot, and if I lose my grip for a second, it snaps closed. Oh, where was I? Oh, I better find my... And if the one that I'm reading, oh, wait, I got to page 30, and yeah, I know this book. I'm not going to want to talk about this to my imaginary booktube friends tomorrow. I'd better pick another book. Oh, wait, Bill, I've got a miniature schnauzer curled up right here, right on top of my heart, in a tight little ball, sound asleep. You would have to be a monster to move such a dog. You'd have to be a monster to move such a dog, to disturb such a dog, merely to get up and get another book. So you're stuck. You're stuck with the books that you thought to bring to your bed, as opposed to this, where I have all the books I could ever want, all the choices I could ever want. So I won't go to I have a small selection of print and paper Star Trek books, but I don't think I'll go to them. I think I'll just pick another one from the roster here, and maybe we'll have better luck. We will see. I will pick a different thing, and we will see what we see tomorrow. We'll do daily Star Trek log updates, at least for June. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.